It is day 38 of the war with Iran. Here's where things stand. Donald Trump chose Easter Sunday to reveal the fullest portrait to date of his instability and lack of self-regulation and self-control. Trump forcing Republicans to either give voice to the reality that most Americans, including Marjorie Taylor Greene and Alex Jones among them, can see with their own eyes, or, politically speaking, go down with the ship. Exceedingly large majorities of Americans disapprove of Donald Trump's war with Iran and reject his shifting reasons for waging it. The war has caused an historic disruption to energy markets, and gas prices here continue to soar. Against that backdrop, or maybe because of it, Donald Trump threatened Iran with what would amount to war crimes over the weekend in a profanity-laden post Easter morning. Because he's the only president we have, we're going to read it to you. Quote, Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day all wrapped into one in Iran. There will be nothing like it, 3 exclamation points. Open the fucking straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. It was a post that was so crazy. It was sent by the President of the United States. It was sent on Easter morning. So a lot of people had to check to see if it was real, yours truly included. But Trump made sure we knew that it was real and that he wrote it by doubling down on the things he said in that post in a series of interviews, including this one with ABC News on Sunday. He said, quote, if no peace deal is reached with Iran in the next 48 hours, quote, we're blowing up the entire country, end quote. And then today, he said these things.
The entire country can be taken out in one night, and that night might be tomorrow night. We're giving them till tomorrow, 8 o'clock Eastern time, and after that, they're going to have no bridges, they're going to have no power plants, Stone Ages.
Stone Ages. Stuff like that was really the tip of the iceberg in terms of the things that the President of the United States said today. Trump threatened to jail the journalist who revealed that a service member, an American service member, was missing after a fighter jet was shot down in Iran. When Trump was asked by a New York Times reporter whether Trump was concerned about committing war crimes, he said no, and then he attacked the New York Times for saying that Trump was going to lose an election. It is safe to describe it as erratic and unhinged, and we'll get to all of it over the course of the next 2 hours. But as for those strikes Trump keeps tweeting about and talking about against Iran, and what Trump may soon order the men and women of the United States military to do, according to Trump, as early as tomorrow night, former military lawyers warn that what Donald Trump is publicly calling for, if it is followed through, would, quote, amount to the most serious war crimes, and thus the president's statements place service members in a profoundly challenging situation. Iranian power plants and other critical civilian infrastructure are protected from attacks by the law of war of the United States that we helped craft after World War II. Despite those well-settled legal parameters, Trump has repeatedly threatened to obliterate such infrastructure without regard to the law's high demands. His comments are blatant expressions that he is willing to turn the U.S. into a rogue state, like Iran and Russia, one that rejects the fundamental legal restraints that protect innocent non-combatants like children and the Iranian civilian population itself. There is also the problem of how Trump's threats could further prolong and extend this now very unpopular war with Iran, not to mention the damage Donald Trump is doing to our reputation on the world stage. New York Times reports this, quote, the Trump administration's language and actions could have far-reaching consequences. Within Iran, it's likely to galvanize opposition to the U.S., including among some ordinary Iranians who have protested their own government. On the global stage, it could further diminish America's standing and weaken norms of state conduct in wartime that are intended to protect civilians. An unhinged Donald Trump threatening potential war crimes as he fails to find a clear way out of the war with Iran is where we start today. Lieutenant General Mark Hertling is here. He served as the commanding general of the U.S. Army in Europe. Ann Applebaum joins us as well. She's a columnist for The Atlantic. She's the host of the podcast Autocracy in America. General Hertling, I asked you on Wednesday before I was down sick for a couple days if Trump was sane. I want to re-up the question. Do you view him, or do you think men and women of the military view him as completely sane?
Not Really, Nicole, I'll answer that timidly. But based on the rantings over the weekend, based on the press conference today, based on the things he's saying, which are obviously against the law, I think two things are happening. First of all, the president is becoming increasingly enamored with the power of American military. And secondly, he believes that he can use it in any way he wants without regard to international law, the laws of land warfare, the Geneva Convention, or just straight out morality, being a moral person with values. So it's increasingly concerning that he is stating some of these things, and the way he's stating them are true indicators that something is amiss in his personality or his approach to the presidency, the greatest power in the world.
Let me read from Just Security about what it does to the military when the rhetoric includes threats of carrying out war crimes. Quote, asking our military professionals, lawyers, and commanders alike to grapple with the president's erratic behavior is enormously consequential. U.S. military commanders have sworn to obey the Constitution and only those orders from their superiors that are lawful. Threats to bomb Iran back to the Stone Ages and to show, quote, no quarter, no mercy are plainly illegal. Trump's outrageous statements gravely threaten our military professionals' bedrock moral and legal principles, ones enshrined in the law of war that they've been trained to follow their entire careers. So we're post these trespasses, right? So these things have already happened. People warned that they could happen during the election. People warned that Hegseth might not be a good person to be on the wall for the rule of law inside the military. He's there anyway. And Trump is now threatening to bomb Iran to the Stone Ages. And Pete Hegseth has said that in his view, the theory of war in Iran is to give no quarter. What does that mean inside the military, General?
It means you use any means possible to kill people. You're not going to let people escape. You're not going to take any prisoners. You're basically going to rape, pillage, and plunder, taking it back to the 17th century. And Nicole, what we're talking about is behavior that modern societies have condemned and said we ought to at least provide guidelines for those who have to execute violence. Those are soldiers. And, I'm going to go back to something you said a minute ago, because I've trained for 40 years as a soldier and as a commander. And when you're an officer in the United States Army, you're loyal to a couple of things. You're primarily loyal to the Constitution. You are also loyal to your superiors if they give, as you said, lawful orders. When they start giving unlawful orders, you find a way to push back on them and to make sure they adjust their approach. But you also are loyal to the soldiers that are under your command. So those three loyalties sometimes are conflicting. So I'm sure there's a lot of military commanders right now, a lot of senior officers who are saying to themselves, I can't obey an unlawful order. I can't do things that I know are absolutely wrong. But they also feel like they have to provide support for their soldiers who don't just get to quit. They have to stay in the military and potentially see an uprising in all of these things. So the senior military officers are in a real quandary on this one, because they know they can't do some of the things that the president is asking them to do. They have a Secretary of Defense who has continually said lethality is better than legality, or words to that effect. So it's really causing some dynamics within those who are thinking soldiers, saying, how do I continue to serve my Constitution and live by the rules that are in law and still conduct these kind of actions, which are horribly immoral and illegal?
What rationale that could serve what you just described as the sort of men and women of the military could possibly be conjured for the purge that is ongoing inside the military at the highest levels by Pete Hegseth right now?
I think it's because people are doing exactly what I described. They're pushing back on them. There's been reports of General George, the Chief of Staff of the Army, has pushed back on several decisions that the Secretary of Defense makes, which is his requirement as a senior officer to protect the Army, protect his soldiers. And he is telling him about, hey, you can't just pull people from promotion lists who have served a lifetime of service just because you want to. Or, hey, you can't do, well, I mean, I won't go into the various details of things that I think the Army has been asked to do that I believe the Chief of Staff of the Army, being the kind of moral character that I know Randy George to be, should push back on. But there's others now, and we talked about last Friday, you had four-star General Dave Hodney, who was also relieved. I have no idea why he was relieved, other than the fact that he may have served with someone like General Milley, who Secretary Hegseth doesn't like. But the one that I really was floored by was the request for retirement of two-star General, Major General Bill Green, who is the Chief of Army Chaplains. I know Bill Green. There is no finer chaplain. There's no finer spiritual advisor or officer than him. He served as my chaplain on 2 different occasions. So I know him personally. And the fact that he is the chief of chaplains, of all the chaplains in the Army, tells me something caused him to be chosen for that position a couple of years ago, and it was his character and his moral judgment. So when you take these 3 people together, I can understand the relief of 1 or 2 people, but you're talking about, as I understand it, 14 different people that Secretary Hegseth has relieved and has not given a reason for any of them. Those are the 4 stars. There's been many more 3 stars that he's relieved, but you can only conjure it up by saying what positions did they hold and how were they influenced the force, and what were they saying about the moral approach to the kinds of orders they were receiving and what kind of combat they were expecting to deliver.
And Applebaum, we have a tendency, I think, to think that we're the first, or that we're new, or that a purge of the most senior ranks of the military, men and women of character, as they're described by other former military leaders, is unique. But it is not. It is a hallmark of a lurch toward autocracy. Just talk about what you see from that perspective.
I'd say two. I want to say 2 things. One is, you're right. Control over the military, control over the police, control over the use of the politicization of the arms, that parts of the government that are allowed to use violence, and putting them at the service of one man or one political party, as opposed to the service of the American people. This is a sign of political deterioration. I mean, you can look at Stalin's Russia. Stalin was famously destroyed his general staff. You can look at actually modern China, where you see the Chinese leadership removing people who are in the way of Xi Jinping. So the idea of removing top people who might object to the will of the leader is something that you can see in lots of autocracies. But I'd also like to add something to what you were discussing before, namely, is the president crazy, or is he insane, or is there something wrong? I would say I would look at it a little bit differently. This is a president who doesn't make connections. And whether it's to do with deterioration or illness, or this is just the way his brain has always worked, I'm not equipped to say. But he's somebody who doesn't connect what he does in the present to consequences in the future. He doesn't connect things that he says today with how other people will react tomorrow. And so when you talk about something like the laws of war, why do we have laws of war? What was the reason why the international community came together over the last century or so and wrote them down, or tried to create rules of engagement? That's because we also care about how our soldiers will be treated, how our prisoners of war will be treated, how our civilians might be treated. And the point of us adhering to a set of rules or a set of norms is that it then benefits us in the longer term. And what Donald Trump is not able to do is see that broader strategy. So he doesn't understand that the law has uses for us. It's not just something, as Pete Hegseth seems to imply, that binds us or controls us. We need to break out and be really violent and ugly, and that's how we'll win. no, these rules have been useful to Americans. They've been important to the way America has fought wars. They've been important to the image of America, which also has all kinds of consequences down the road. You know, the United States, if it's seen as a law-abiding power, as a country that tries to hit military targets and not civilian targets, you know, in any given conflict, and leave aside the question of whether this war is even legal. But those things have an impact down the road on our reputation, on our diplomatic capabilities, even on our military capabilities. And what's really disturbing about Donald Trump, and what links him to really, what more profoundly links him to the world's authoritarians, is this inability to see that. You know, the norms are useful to everybody, including us, and neither he nor the Secretary of Defense seem to understand that.
Well, I mean, and it's Hegseth and Trump's origin story, right? They meet because when Hegseth is a weekend Fox News morning show host, he's championing the cause of two men who went through the military justice system. He didn't like the outcome, that the military meted out for those men on its own. He asked Trump to intervene, and that's how Hegseth and Trump know each other. I mean, everything about justice and the rule of law is repellent to Donald Trump. And at some level, it reeks of weakness. But I guess my question, Ann, about not connecting and crazy or not crazy, whatever the rationale, he's threatening to annihilate the laws of war while an American soldier is on the ground in Iran. I mean, it suggests that no one can connect to him either.
No, he doesn't connect even between, you know, as I said, actions he takes in the White House and things that happen in Iran. He doesn't think about how the things that he says and does are interpreted and perceived. I mean, you can see a similar problem with American allies. American allies have been insulted. They've experienced tariffs. They see the president ignoring or minimizing their own security issues. They hear him from one day to the next changing his rationale for the war, his strategy for the war, saying one day he needs allies, the next day he doesn't need allies, and then on the third day he wants to destroy NATO because nobody is helping him. They can all hear that, and they are also drawing conclusions and hearing the instability, and that has an impact on how they'll react, not just now, but even a few years down the road, even if there's a different president. You know, this is not a moment that will be forgotten, either by America's allies or by America's enemies.
Yeah, I mean, his comments, I'll play his comments about NATO. I mean, also, you know, loose lips sink ships. He can't stop talking about the technical and operational aspects of the rescue operation, which thank God was successful. I'll show all that to you. No one's going anywhere. Also ahead for us, the U.S. military may very well be at an inflection point as the Trump administration publicly muses about violating the rules of war in the conflict with Iran. One of the 6 Democrats who put out a video calling on the men and women of the military to refuse any illegal orders, Congressman Jason Crow, will join us to talk about all of this. Plus, Donald Trump's Easter rant has once again sparked talk of the 25th Amendment. Even one-time ally Marjorie Taylor Greene, as we said, is questioning Donald Trump's fitness for the office he holds. We'll talk about all that as well. And later in the broadcast, Attorney General Pam Bondi is no more, but it's still very much Donald Trump's Justice Department. We'll talk about the push for justice by the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein as another Trump loyalist takes the wheel at DOJ. All those stories and much more when Deadline White House continues after a quick break. Don't go anywhere today.
The operation, or were there people that were trying to talk you out of going through with the operation this weekend?
Not everybody was on board.
Somebody else within
No,
you?
there was military people, very professional, that preferred not doing it. These 2 were totally on board, which was very important. If they weren't, I would have had a little difficulty. But no, there were military people that said, you just don't do this. You don't go into the heart of a very powerful military. How many men did you send altogether, approximately, for the operation?
I'd love to keep that a secret.
Okay, well, we are. But I will tell you, the number, I'll keep it a secret, but it was hundreds and hundreds of these people.
That is not a secret. I'm going to bring in Democratic Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado to our coverage. He's a member of the Armed Services and Intelligence Committees, one of the 6 Democrats in that video we just showed you. General Hertling and then Applebaum are still here as well. Congressman, your thoughts on the state of public rhetoric from the Commander-in-Chief?
Well, Nicolle, I mean, he continues to put our military in very dangerous, very risky situations. And thanks to the heroism of our special operators, of our aviators, of our military generally, they have had tremendous tactical success in a lot of operations. But let's not confuse tactical success with strategic failure, right? This administration still does not have a plan, does not have an off-ramp, has not been able to articulate to Americans and to Congress what he's trying to achieve, how he's going to achieve it, right? So it is good, it is great actually to applaud and uphold the heroism and the incredible success of our military. But what remains true is this president continues to put them in untenable, very dangerous positions, and the American people are paying for it.
What do you Trump today also said that his message to people who do not support the war, which just 8% of Americans would support putting boots on the ground in Iran, and just 28% of Americans strongly or somewhat support the war, 60% oppose, 67% oppose sending boots on the ground. He said to all those people that, quote, they're foolish, and that the war is about one thing. And I thought that one thing might be the thing that Rubio keeps talking about, or the thing that J.D. Vance has talked about, or the thing that Lindsey Graham has talked about, but it's actually a different thing. It's, quote, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's not their ballistic missile capability, as Rubio has suggested. It's not that they need to, quote, rise up, as Trump had suggested toward the beginning of the year. It's about, according to Donald Trump, quote, one thing, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. What is your current understanding, or is that it, that is what we're doing there?
Yeah, well, it has changed by the week. At one point, it's ballistic missiles, and next it's drones, and next it's nuclear weapons. He has sprinkled regime change in there numerous times, and he continues to. Here is the bottom line for me. The bottom line is we have spent over 20 years, $5 to $8 trillion, 7,000 American lives in what is now an endless cycle of conflict in the Middle East, and Americans are over it. I'm over it. We have to find a way to extract ourselves from this cycle of endless conflict. Now, let's not be confused here. That doesn't mean that we don't keep ourselves safe, that we aren't strong and willing to use force when our adversaries threaten Americans or American interests. But that was not the case here, right? This president and the administration completely failed to show an imminent threat. In fact, they have actually come out recently in the last couple of weeks and admitted that there is no imminent threat, that this was a long-term play by the president, and it's got to end, right? Americans are over this perpetual state of conflict when they can't afford rent, they can't afford their mortgage, they can't afford groceries. We have to end this cycle.
Congressman, what do you make of the high-level defections from deep inside the MAGA coalition? People like Marjorie Taylor Greene basically calling Trump nuts, Alex Jones calling out his physical, what Alex Jones describes as his physical maladies, Joe Rogan, every episode of late, pointing to what a betrayal the war in Iran is, Megyn Kelly teeing off on the blind support for Israel that this administration shows. Now, these are not members of a political coalition that I assembled or would be a part of, but they are really important members of Donald Trump's political coalition, and they are now publicly rebuking him for the first time in 10 years. What do you make of the political opportunity for Democrats to speak to a broader swath of Americans right now?
Well, here's what's going on. It's actually very simple. Well, what's happened is the political elites, wealthy executives, energy company executives, defense industry executives made tons of money over the last 20 plus years, while it was working class folks and folks largely from rural areas, not entirely, but largely from rural areas that did the fighting, did the dying, had to pay for these wars. Right? And let's not underestimate, you can never underestimate the anger and the resentment of folks like me and like those who I grew up with that saw this endless cycle of conflict, and we had to bear the burden of it. well, the elites got all the benefit from it. Donald Trump actually noticed that. He saw that a couple of years ago, which is why he actually campaigned on ending the cycle of conflict and reining in military adventurism. But now as president, he's completely turned his back on those folks, completely turned his back on those promises, and he's become one of the most interventionist, pro-conflict presidents of our lifetime. Right, 7 now countries bombed in the first year of his administration alone, and now here we are in a war that nobody has approved, nobody in Congress has debated and voted on, and it's running amok.
He has threatened Iran publicly with acts that, if the military carries them out, most legal experts believe would amount to war crimes. You and 5 of your colleagues sent a direct message to the men and women of the military, reminding them of their obligation not to follow an illegal order. Do you believe illegal orders are being given?
It's hard for us to tell because we're not getting the briefing and the information that the Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee in Congress needs to receive to make that determination. I am gravely concerned by this president's comments about bombing electrical infrastructure, desalination plants. I mean, that would be on its face a violation of the laws of war and would be a war crime. He is continuously threatening to commit war crimes, whether it's shooting, protesters in Lafayette Square, which would actually be a crime against U.S. federal law, sending troops to polling stations, which also would be a violation of U.S. federal law. He has said he's going to kill the families of terrorists, which would be a violation of the laws of war. And of course, now with Iran, this is a president that has shown a complete disdain for the rule of law, for the Constitution, for the laws of war. And we have to stand up with unbelievable voices, Republicans, Democrats, Americans of all stripes, and condemn what the president is saying and say we will not tolerate it and we will seek accountability if he moves forward with it. And at the same time, I stand by that video that we filmed last year in telling our service members they have an obligation to the rule of law and to the Constitution, and that must always be their North Star.
General Hertling, let me bring you in on that point. Do you believe the men and women of the military have been given illegal orders?
I'll go with the congressman on that. Unless you see exactly what the orders are, Nicolle, you can't say for sure 100%. You also have to see what the lawyers say about those orders. But I got to tell you, as the congressman just said, if you're talking about bombing desalination plants and energy facilities and things that more civilians than military rely on, and it will cause chaos within the population, then yes, that is an illegal order, as I read the various articles of the Geneva Convention, number 47 through 58. There are a bunch of different articles within the Geneva Convention that address this, and they are pretty clear in terms of understanding how different strikes, kinetic strikes against objectives, will cause more harm against civilians versus the military capability to conduct their operations. Then yes, that's an illegal order.
I'm going to ask all of you to stick around with us. I'm going to sneak in a quick break. When we come back, Trump has attacked NATO today again. We'll show that to you. We'll all be right back.
MS Now Premium gives you early access and ad-free listening to all of MS Now's original podcasts, including Rachel Maddow.
Paper tiger. Putin's not afraid of NATO. Putin's afraid of us, very afraid of us. And he's explained it to me a lot of times. I got to know him very well. I know him very well. NATO's a paper tiger. NATO is us. And when we needed them, but we didn't need them, by the way. We didn't need them, obviously, because they haven't helped at all. Just the opposite. They've actually gone out of their way not to help.
We're back with Congressman Jason Crow, General Hertling, and Ann. And I feel like I finally understand. Putin explained NATO to him. That is why he is the most anti-NATO president the country has ever seen. I mean, that to me, and that is the word that Putin uses in all of his domestic propaganda to his own country about what NATO is. If NATO didn't freak the you-know-what out of Vladimir Putin, you wouldn't be going berserk in Ukraine. I mean, just talk about what a pile of baloney Donald Trump has swallowed from Vladimir Putin when it comes to NATO.
So there are two very weird things about that statement. Several weird things, but two in particular. One is that Trump is talking as if the U.S. did not create and lead NATO.